Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be taking a look at Vulture. So I recently got to rank 2 to 3 tech rank up gem, and I figured Vulture would be a fun champion to kind of take a look at a bit more, because I do think he's definitely better than people give him credit for. So basically, quickly we're gonna check out his damage output against this Realm of Legends Winter Soldier, then we're gonna get in some variant 3 fights in some Act 6, Act 5 and so on, and check out what else he can do. So quickly about how Vulture works. So first things first, his awakened ability basically makes him incinerate immune. He's not incinerate immune by himself, but if he's awakened, he converts all incinerate debuffs on him into Chitauri energy, which we're going to talk about later. So he's not going to be taking any incinerate damage as long as he is awakened. Also, depending on signature level, you will have a passive power gain as long as opponent is incinerated. Now, another important thing is that Vulture has a consistent armor buff. That armor strength depends on the amount of Chitauri energy you have on you at any given time. Also, he basically works on this Chitauri energy. Every time he lands a critical strike on opponent, he has a chance to gain 5 energy. Also, you gain some more with your level 1 buff, I suppose, on opponent. And I'll explain that in a bit. But also, when you more or less perform a dashback intercept, you have a chance to power drain opponent at the cost of half of your Chitauri energy. Also, if you do dashback and opponent happens to block it, you kind of gain phase charge, I would call it, and you are able to phase one opponent's hit if you dashback and hit their block. So it is quite useful. Quite often he also has a synergy that lets him start the fight with that phase charge active, so you can get an opening against any opponent pretty much immediately. Also, at the cost of 10 Chitauri energy, every time you basically use your dexterity mastery, you incinerate opponent for 5 seconds, and that incinerate is fairly decent. I really like that mechanic in Vulture because you can easily place incinerates on opponent with no effort at all whatsoever. And yeah, that is really helpful for his damage output as well. Basically, now let's get to level 1. Level 1 places a buff on opponent, and then for any bit of power they gain, you gain more Chitauri energy, and they are also drained about 25% of the power they are gaining during that course. So if you want to fill off your Chitauri energy quickly, you want spam level 1s. That will also give you a lot more opportunities to power drain 50% opponent's current power with your repulsor strikes. Level 2, however, is the one that deals damage, because level 2 basically deals damage on opponent for every bit of power they gain while the buff is active on your opponents. So when you are looking to deal most amount of damage, you want to stick your level 2s. Level 3 simply incinerates opponent. It's nothing kind of special, but it looks cool, which you're going to check towards the end of the video. But yeah, so let's see what happens when we have a level 2 buff active on this vision and he triggers his synthesis. That is going to be definitely interesting. So in its essence, Vulture is quite good against power gaining champions, especially champions that gain power faster, but not kind of like explicitly crazy fast. So we're gonna see. So we're dropping our level 2. He's at 42%, which is fair enough. 34% now, and now let's just let that synthesis trigger, and he's pretty much dead. He took like I believe 14k damage. So that was quite good, and this is a rank 3 Vulture, so we were able to close this fight out fairly quickly. Now, the same theory will apply against this Hyperion. This Hyperion is from Act 6, Chapter 2, Quest 4, I think. So we do need to be careful here that we do not parry him while that yellow armor is active, because that is going to hurt a lot. But aside from that, our plan here is fairly simple. We want to drop our level 2s, and then Hyperion is going to be killing himself by gaining power, and obviously we will be striking him because that power burns even more. So this level 2 works even if opponent does not have a passive power gain. It works with any power opponent is gaining, even if it is by you striking them. And I forgot to mention, so we took about 250 hits to kill that Winter Soldier for a rank 3 Vulture, and that isn't horrible, but it's definitely nowhere great either. So he's like mediocre damage output champion, but he can help himself with the level 2s against power gain champions, and that is interesting. So once again, we are about to drop our level 2 once we bait Hyperion's level 2, and then we're going to see how it interacts with Hyperion. So we put on our thermal feedback buff on opponent, and now he is constantly losing health as long as his power gains active. Also, every time we strike him, he's losing a nice chunk of health. There we got saved by that miss mechanic Vulture has, so it does come in handy fairly often. And there we got a good power drain, because whenever Rapture Strike activates, it drains 50% of opponent's current power, so it can save you quite a bit, and you can accomplish that by doing dashback intercepts. And yeah, so here we go, 70 hits in, even with class disadvantage, a rank 3 Vulture is dealing with this Hyperion fairly easily without much trouble at all. We are taking some recall damage because we are running suicides, but as we can see, this Hyperion is dropping fairly quickly thanks to our thermal feedback buffs, because as soon as they are active, he's eating a lot of damage. If my Vulture would be higher signature level, I would be able to maintain it a lot better, because his power gain depends on the level of your signature, and my Vulture is only sig 20. If your high sig Vulture would be gaining a lot more power with his signature ability in these fights as well. But here basically last 2% thermal feedback, as soon as that yellow buff will expire, he is basically done for. So yeah, Act 6 fight over with barely over 100 hits for a rank 3 Vulture with class disadvantage. I don't think that's bad at all. Now we dipped in Variant 3, and obviously because Vulture is tech champion, he has no attack penalty, and we are currently dealing with 200% power gain and Chaos Venompool. So once again, to demonstrate that Vulture's thermal feedback works without opponents having a passive power gain, that will be extremely useful in this fight as well, because his 200% power gain is going to let me burn him for a lot more. As soon as I get to drop level 2, my damage output should increase immensely. So here we are dropping our level 2, and now our main goal is bait out his level 2 and then get him back up to a new one as quickly as we can. And we can see that every time we land a strike, he is burning for a lot of health. It was like 3k additional damage per hit, or 2k depending how much power he actually gains. So this is extremely useful. There I dropped my level 1 just because I had to get rid of his unstoppable buff, but now we're gonna go for another level 2, and we're gonna be dealing some serious damage once again. So he's ticking away slowly but surely, and even hitting the block, our actual damage was 200 or 197, but the energy damage that Venompool was taking was 880 for our light hits in block. So Vulture definitely has some really interesting and useful mechanics, dare I say. And now next fight we're checking out is again in Variant 3 against this Phoenix. So as we know, Phoenix has a passive power gain on her level 1. Every time she drops a level 1, she gains a bunch of power depending how many furies she had. Yes, how many furies she consumed. And additionally, to our incinerates, because we will be dodging, that power again should increase our damage output against this Phoenix to a fair decent amount, so long as we consistently keep her throwing those level 1 attacks. And so let's see what happens. We have thermal feedback on her. As soon as she drops that level 1, she's ticking away for several hundred a second, and it's happening relatively quickly, so we can see her health is dwindling quite quickly. So overall, I definitely do like Vulture. I like playing with him. I think he's fairly quirky, and I think he has definitely got some good uses in the content. My only kind of point I don't like about him, he has to be duped in order to be Incinerate immune, and he also should be higher signature level in order to be played more aggressively, because that signature level does affect your power gain, and the more power gain you have, the more uptime you can have on your thermal feedback on your level 2s, and that also means you have vastly increased damage output. So if my Vulture would be highly duped, I would definitely be hitting a lot harder and finishing off fights quicker. But there we go, 70 hits against super stacked Phoenix, not a problem. So lastly, well, not lastly, but the last kind of specific example I want to talk about is obviously that Vulture has a permanent armor armor up, and even if opponent somehow nullifies this armor up, you gain it back after a while, so you will have this armor up pretty much always on you, and that is extremely beneficial obviously in Havok matchup. Havok is one of the kind of easier, straightforward opponents to fight for Vulture, because you can fight him like any other normal opponent. Vulture doesn't mind at all. Only things that kind of is annoying in this fight is that Havok is also Incinerate immune, so you do lose out a bit of damage with Vulture. However, your thermal feedback does cover that basically, because Havok has a small, slow, passive power gain, which also increases your damage output. So it's kind of give and take in this situation. Now, I did mess up there a bit. I took a few hits in a block, which wasn't perfect. And here I activated my Siphon Charge as well, because I thought I'm going to get to level 2. So I did make a couple of mistakes. And yeah, however, we're about back of our level 2, and we're gonna once again be starting to deal increased amount of damage as soon as we have baited out this level 2 from Havok. But as you can see, this is Act 616, and this is a rank 3 Vulture dealing with that Havok. Like, there is absolutely no problem. Our biggest problem is our own recoil, because we are in fact currently running Suicide Masteries. But as we can see, Havok is going down much quicker than we are. Slowly but surely he's gonna go down. It's gonna take us about 100 hits, which isn't too bad again for an Act 6 opponent with a rank 3. You can't really complain about that damage output, and all those extra power burns and all the extra stuff he has is definitely quite useful. And yeah, so Havok's at 20%. We absolutely did not care about his plasma charges, because we always have our armor up active, means we take no damage while they detonate. So it's pretty much perfect for us. Now we again took a few hits in block, but we have our thermal feedback active, so we should be able to kind of finish him out while it's active, and there down he goes. And now lastly, I'm going to show a few fights in Act 5, just how he competes against like a regular content, I suppose, because opponents here are only 3 times stronger than he is. So it's a rank 3 in Act 5, so it's like perfectly well ranked champion for the piece of content we're in. And this Ultron is stun immune. This time I am also using Nick Fury and Quake synergy, just because I want to activate my thermal feedback and Raptor strikes as much as I can. So I do want to kind of intercept and be as aggressive as I can to increase his damage output, because the more times we can land a hit an opponent while thermal feedback is active, the more extra damage they will be taking. So being aggressive with Vulture does help increasing your damage output. So as you can see here, Ultron is stun immune. However, we don't care about it. We do land a bunch of dashback intercepts. We did power rain him several times. He's pretty much constantly under Incinerate, and down he goes. Pretty much, yeah. So level 2 takes him down. Next fight is going to be against Superior Iron Man, and that should definitely be an easy one. One thing to mention, Vulture synergizes extremely well with Stark Spider-Man, because they have like return synergies. You gain basically attack. Stark Spider-Man gains increased ability accuracy while his AI is active, and Vulture gains extra Incinerate damage. So that definitely works out well for both of them, so they work perfectly together. But now we can take a look at how we are dealing with the Superior Iron Man. As we can see here, even with class disadvantage, we're chipping away at him fairly quickly. Incinerate helps, our thermal feedback helps. We just need to make sure we can be as aggressive as we can, so we deal all the extra damage that we possibly can deal. And that will be thereabouts it for this fight. We activated Arc Overload. He is healing a bit, but it's not going to be anything too crazy, and the fight is over. Once again, 77 hits, 76 hits with class disadvantage, not too bad. Now, next fight, we're going to check out another interesting kind of way to use Vulture, and that will be towards the end of the fight, where we can show that we pretty much can ignore the fact that opponents have a level 3 attack, so long as we know what we're doing. And that comes from the fact that Vulture can burn 25% of any power opponents gain while we have any of his thermal buffs on opponent. So as before, we want to be as aggressive as we possibly can. We don't want to particularly kind of try and bait out opponent's specials if we don't have to. And I'm going to show exactly why that is towards the end of this fight. So we have Siphon Charge on opponent. That means we will be gaining our power quicker. But that also means every time we land a hit, we can see opponent power bar. When it jumps up, it goes down a bit as well. That's because we're draining 25% of any power we are giving to opponent, so long as we have either of our thermal buffs active, either Siphon Charge or thermal feedback. And now what will that exactly mean? That means as long as one of them is active, we can make sure the opponent never gets his level 3 attack. It's simple as that. So you can see he's at the wall. We don't want to bait the special attack. We can just keep striking at opponent. He will not get to his level 3. Simple as that. And that is one extremely useful thing for Vulture, because if you have troubles baiting off opponent's special attacks, you can just keep hitting them and just don't, because sometimes opponents do like to hold their power, and Vulture can get around it fairly well. So it definitely will come in handy in many situations if you like playing Vulture. But yeah, that will be kind of me more or less done for today's video. Last fight, I don't think I even finished the entire fight, just because I wanted to show you guys how Vulture's level 3 look like, because it is quite cool. The animation is quite cool for him being fairly like older character in the game at this point already. I definitely do enjoy his level 3 animation. But yeah, once again, that will be me done for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you guys soon. Laters.